proof that it drives on the road for 5 minutes at least anyway. Seems really weird because it's the first car project I've ever done. I obviously made quite a large amount of the parts of the engine. I just started with the very basic block and cylinders. Everything else I manufactured the overdrive between the engine and the transmission. It seems to be working quite well. There's been a bit of a delay since I took it out on the road the last time because actually there was an oil pressure issue, which I'll show you. Crashed into the wheelie bin, so I've had to fit a reversing camera onto it, which is basically like a rear view mirror. And other than that, I'm sort of quite happy with the cooling. Seems to level out at 80 degrees at the moment. I suspect the radiator probably isn't big enough. It might not be big enough when it's on the dyno, either on a rolling road, particularly with being behind the cab. We might struggle a little bit to get enough air going through it there. And the rolling road at John Sleeth race cars, it's going to be one of the next places I have to take it. I'm going to take it out on the road as much as I can, as much as I can afford, at 6 or 8 miles per gallon, and just try and iron out any bugs really. The oil pressure issue I was talking about was the fact that the turbos, and this one over here actually has a temporary oil pressure gauge fitted to it, and I put that on originally on the dyno, and I refitted it a couple of weeks ago and noticed that they weren't getting anywhere near the same pressure as the crankshaft, which on this engine it's regulated to 60 psi at the moment. Now the oil pressure relief valve, which if we go in through the wing here, you can just see the top of it there. Now you can see a couple of hydraulic pipes coming off it there. Well, the one on the left feeds the camshafts and the front accessory gearbox. That hydraulic line there at the back feeds my overdrive through a couple of oil jets. Below it you can see another line coming out the back there. I think that's it, and then there used to be another line on the front which has now got a plug in it. Those used to feed the 2 turbos, and in the manual, and this is the problem, the manual explains it, that it's got high pressure oil from those feeding the gear tower, which is at the back of the engine down there, which was originally put on there to drive the engine governor and the hydraulic pump. In actual fact, it is high pressure oil, but it is also fed through restriction. If you're reading, or used to reading manuals for the Merlin engine, like I am, they tell you everything in like Proustian detail. So you know exactly what you're looking at, and the wording is just really, really complex. The manual for this Antar tank transporter installation for this engine really is, it just kind of gives you the very basics of it. So I took that as being a high pressure oil feed, when in actual fact, by the time you're feeding 2 turbochargers with it, it's actually drops. It drops quite a lot. I think they were right down to about 25 psi, and that's just not going to do them any good at all. So that's been fixed. The reversing camera around the back there, with the radiator there, even if I did put a rear view mirror on it, well, wouldn't be able to see out, so that's basically now my rear view mirror. So here's just a couple of interesting things off the data log from that drive. I've only got 3 things shown on this. I've got the thick green line at the bottom, which is the engine RPM. The orangey coloured one above it is the throttle position sensor percentage, and the red one at the top is the map, which is the boost or vacuum. And actually, at that one point when I went a bit faster up that one bit of road, there, we got up to, I might not be able to click the mouse and everywhere, but it actually got up to 1.05 psi, something like that. And at the throttle opening, you see, is at 45% there, but only for a very split second. And at 1160 RPM, the maximum RPM I actually saw on here was 1210, I think. Most of the time when it was cruising along the road, and this is the problem with the gear ratio that I was talking about before, it's pretty much doing this kind of RPM. 5 to 700 RPM all the time. It's cruising along the road at about 20 miles an hour. And it's not really going to pick up a lot of power until it's doing 40 miles an hour. When I say a lot of power, I mean in the order of like 500. At 1200 RPM, wide open throttle, it makes about 2 psi of boost, and that's about 300 horsepower. So that's actually quite a lot for such a low RPM. But very pleased with it.